right now. Okay. I just want to begin by a couple thank yous. A big thank you goes to Bill and Eleanor Ziv, who are sponsoring tonight's program in memory of their son, the yahrzeit of their son Edward, Rafael Eliezer Aharon ben Zev Shmuel, whose yahrzeit was a little less than a week ago, the 30th of Nisan. I also want to thank Mrs. Shoshana Rudman, who was very helpful in arranging tonight's special event. And I think we all appreciate the significance of this. Governor DeWine here in Ohio, just a little while ago, declared that schools are going to stay closed for the duration of the academic school year. And then reality hit all of us at once that we're in this for more than just a week or two. We're in this for the rest of the school year, and we're all adjusting to the challenges of juggling work, parenting, and school all at the same time in our homes with all of our children at the same time. And it's really a tremendous challenge. And I'm very excited to have Yeshaya Lieber with us here tonight to share his expertise, his experience, and his knowledge about how to best navigate these times. So now I'm going to give the floor over to Yeshaya. Take it away.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for having me all the way out in Cincinnati from the 5 towns in New York. I want to thank Rabbi Alt. We spent a little bit of time on the phone the other day, and it's very nice to speak to you then. And thank you for arranging this, and for Shoshana to reaching out initially to arrange this. So thank you very much for having me. I even know some people who are in here, which is very nice to see some familiar names and faces. So thank you for joining us. Yes, this is a pretty wild and crazy time that, as your governor also stated, as most governors around, even still the country, that we are in some version of quarantine and lockdown that requires us to change the way we function as personally, as parents, as spouses, as for our whole life. So the big question is, how do we not just survive, but how do we thrive during this time as parents, but really as individuals? Because if we're okay, then most of the people around us can be even more okay. So I just want to go over just a quick overview of what we're doing. I made a PowerPoint and I shared it with the rabbi. I believe many of you have it. The idea of using the PowerPoint is just to give you an overview of where my head is at and we're going. You do not have to follow along, but it could be helpful of some of the specific skills, concepts, ideas, and values that we're going to be referring to, that I'll be referring to. So we're going to discuss something called fundamental attribution error, understanding our own characteristics, what kind of reinforcements that go on in our daily lives, and the dynamics, especially now, that happen, and what does that really mean, reinforcements. Something that I like and I think is a very important concept about POP, which means process-oriented praising, specific kind of way of sharing feedback to children or even to ourselves, and then how we give over effective commands to help execute things in a more efficient and appropriate way for kids to be responding towards. We want to understand what pre-correction means and how we use that in so many aspects of our lives, helpful for us personally when we understand what to expect, especially for children. Structuring the unstructured, which is what we're currently in the middle of. Creativity, what does that really mean? It's a big question a lot of parents are asking right now. Managing our expectations and the children's expectations, school expectations, family expectations. Empathy, especially with children, both young and teenagers. What does empathy look like now? And how do we connect to them in that way? Catch them if you can, where we want to see the kinds of things that are maybe happening earlier on, even now, new versus old, and it's not all about being strong. And we'll go into all those different things. So I want to jump in right away, and we go to the concept of fundamental attribution error. If you are looking at your slides, it's the 3rd slide. So the fundamental attribution error and a very scientific definition there I give is people's tendency to place undue emphasis on internal characteristics to explain someone else's behavior in a given situation rather than considering external factors. So I give some quick examples there. I just got caught off by a real jerk driving 90 miles an hour, or the kid who just ran through a room giving ADHD. But if you could imagine for a second, if you're in your town and you're driving on the highway and that car cuts you off, right? Now, if you look at the car and imagine for a second, it's a Ford Mustang in red, right? So if somebody can jump in here, Rabbi, so if everybody can be patient with their own quick answer, but if you can unmute everybody for a second, and I would like some feedback. What kind of person do you think is driving that car, driving 90 miles an hour, who cut you off on the highway in a red, hot Ford Mustang?
Gangster.
Gangster. Okay. How old is that gangster, and what gender is that gangster?
A male, 25.
Okay. And what do you think he's driving 90 miles an hour for?
Maybe drag race. I don't know. Maybe drag racing.
Right, but he's a punk for sure, right?
Yes.
Right.
Running away from the cops.
A red car could easily be a woman.
Oh, I'm unmuted and I'm back. So that's funny. So when we drive a few more minutes, we're upset because we decide what kind of person that is in the car. Probably an unsafe young punk driving, and we get past the hospital. You know, that hospital on highway whatever near you where you guys live, and you see him get out of the car, holding somebody, running into the emergency room. So put that back in your mind now. Like, wait a second. Everything made sense in our minds. What we decided what probably was the story because of the color of the car, the kind of car it was, and that kind of style of driving. That's what it said. Okay? So let's have that image in our head. Now we go to the second case where we're a parent or even I'll use, for example, we're a teacher for a second, or a shul leader or something, or that kid you know about who's always pushing to the front of the line because they just don't care about anybody else, and they're for sure really impulsive, and they're not nice, right? And these are all judgments that we're putting on this child. And then we find out later that actually the reason why he's a kid who's knocking kids over or screaming out loud is because he's actually anxious, and he personally can't handle not being in the front because he needs to function in a way, in order for him to function, he has to be in the front to be able to hear what the mower is saying, and it settles him and grounds him. But he doesn't know how to handle himself, so he's knocking people over or desks or being inappropriate or being impulsive or being not nice to other kids, but really that's an anxious internal issue that's going on for him. So we are judging them, this child, this doctor, these people, all under the circumstances that we decide are actually going on versus something else that may be the case. Now I added one now here, right? I've been thinking about this. So we go to Costco or we're in Stop and Shop or whatever store we're in, and we see that one person hoarding all the toilet paper or all the disinfectants or all that stuff, and you're like, first of all, they're still manufacturing those things. So why do you need to do that? You're a selfish person and you don't care about everybody else, right? Because that's how we are. We're human beings and we typically judge people. But maybe there's something else going on that we don't know that is causing them to have that kind of reaction right now. Now, we do know that COVID-19 is creating a real sense of insecurity, unknowingness, actual physical anxiety, and people's reaction is take care of ourselves. I know that I'm going totally blank on the very famous Jewish, he speaks now. He was basically speaking about how it's very common, and this is generally in science, that we typically take care of ourselves under crisis. And the most beneficial thing we can do is settle into that and then be able to give back. And that actually makes us feel better and gives us more control. So he was giving a very nice inspirational speech on it. But initially, we take care of ourselves. So we have to understand what is going on outside of our own decisions of what people are doing, our judgments of what people are doing, our assumptions of what people are doing, the perception of what we think versus reality, before we go into any situation or before we fully accept what just happened in front of us right now, right? Even for myself, I'm a therapist, I'm a parenting expert. You don't think for a second this isn't affecting me? Of course it's affecting me. It's not affecting my children? Of course it's affecting my children. Am I going to be a little bit off? A lot of bit off? For sure. We're human beings. So we have to really take into consideration all of the things that are going on around us before we can even take another step forward to understand what is happening. So I think that's a very important foundational concept to keep in mind. Fundamental attribution error. So now we go into what are the characteristics of ourselves as parents, as caretakers, that we understand and can and know about ourselves and realize how we handle things, right? So we have our own disposition, our own tendency of what kind of mood and energy are we? Are we a morning person and high energy? Are we not a morning person and high energy? Do we need things really structured, or are we comfortable with letting things go on the fly? Are we good with technology? Are we not good with technology? How does that affect us? How is that creating additional stress on top of the uncertainties around us? What does it mean to have managerial skills? I wrote there, right? We're parents. Who says that we know how to run a factory? Who says we know how to run an operation with 7 kids, doing things to, I'm sorry, I lost track. I got distracted by that chat information. I apologize, Rabbi. I'm going to just move that away from myself and get back here, right? How do we know to be experts to do those kinds of things? So we have to be honest with that. Like, no, I'm not good at technology. I don't know how to handle 5 kids at 7 different ages and know how to handle a high school Zoom session, a kid's Google Doc. My daughter's special ed teacher also needs help, right? So I have 3 kinds of levels of working here. I have a kid who doesn't want to wake up at all, and my husband has to work, and I have to work. So how is that even possible, right? So we have to know what's happening and what we're capable of doing. Now, when I say intelligence, you're all intelligent. The question is, where are our intelligence levels functioning at that time? Again, I said an example right now is very important, is the technology question. Most things are happening technologically. For younger kids, it's much more important and much more needed that parents are more involved in that process. Though I'm pretty impressed with my 6-year-old. He basically knows how to use my computer just as well as I do, and I'm pretty good at computers. So this last 6 weeks, that's been happening. So we have to just know where we're at, okay? And power. What I mean by power is that a lot of times our dynamic with our children will often be about control rather than helping them along the way. And it's not necessarily from a bad place, but we don't know another way. So we have to be aware of the power dynamic between our children. For example, we're going to go into effective command soon, and I'll jump ahead and I'll go back. But if we want to give a child a way to know the authority, the parent is there and informing them of what they need to do, right? So if I was my child, or if I was explaining to a child I'm working with, and I would say, okay, Moshe, you need to stand over there and get ready to play the next game, right? So that's how I would say it, which is a very clear, direct information, matter of fact, and I also didn't use certain words. I didn't ask them to do it. I didn't suggest to them to do it. I didn't give a request or like an option for them not to do it. I informed. I said, Moshe, you need to stand over there and wait over there for the next game to start. So I gave him very clear directive. A power dynamic in a negative would be, Moshe, you have to stand over there right now and wait until I tell you when your turn is to play. So you have to, I told you, and when I tell you, you'll be ready. And all of that creates friction, tension, back and forth of that. I don't have to listen to you. I don't want to listen to you. And now you're forcing me to do it. So even more do I not want to do it. And the other side of that comes in where if I suggest it, like, Moshe, can you do me a favor? Can you stand over there and get ready to daven? It's just going to happen to be in a few minutes. I'll let you know it's okay whenever you're ready. Like all of a sudden, that's not an option anymore. And why would I want to daven? Because mommy gave me this wonderful option of this open-ended, you have to daven, you don't have to daven. So it becomes very tricky about how we give over that information. So that power dynamic very much plays into this whole dynamic for ourselves from how we function as ourselves. So take that in for a second before I jump, okay? Now I put in a cute little meme. I was looking for some fun memes, right? So it says working from home as a parent, right? And you see the kids taped to the floor. If you see it, I'll even hold it up if you can. For those who don't have it, hold on. You can see right there. If you're not looking at it, there's a dad working, and he taped his kids to the floor, right? Because right now is a crazy time, and obviously that's fake. But we have to be ready to be real about how we're going to function and how we are functioning during this time. So that's just trying to be cute. So we're up to reinforcements. Now reinforcements are interesting, and I will need Rabbi if you're there. If we could unmute, and if people can, I guess, I don't know how we're going to do this, Rabbi, so I'll leave this a little bit up to you. People, please share feedback. I'm going to ask some questions now about reinforcements. So
I would recommend, because some people have background noise, and I would recommend that everyone that wants to speak up, just unmute yourself. You should have the ability to do that. Unmute yourself and go ahead and share what you have to share.
Okay, so there are three reinforcements concepts here: positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, and intermittent reinforcement. So I'm going to simplify the first two, and then I'm going to ask a question. All three, and then I'm going to ask a question. So positive reinforcement as a fundamental concept, forget about parenting for a second, means to strengthen, okay? Negative reinforcement, right, to make something stronger. So reinforcement is to make stronger. Positive means to add, negative means to take away. Intermittent means spontaneous. We don't know when it's going to happen, but it's going to get stronger through that. Now, my question is, how does one positively reinforce negative behavior? Now, do not think negative reinforcement means negative behavior. So the question is, how does one positively reinforce, make the behavior stronger? That is bad, that is negative. Go.
The minute you give attention to negative behavior, that's already positively reinforcing it.
Thank you, Shoshana. Yes. Okay. Anybody give an example of something in real time that happens, or a scenario, or by the way, this all happens. We all do this in some kind of way. We often will do it in our relationships or whatever it is. What is something that you could explain that's happened to you that you can realize now, like, oh yeah, I definitely reinforced that negative or poor behavior, or behavior that's not desired. Doesn't even have to necessarily be negative, just something you don't want.
You're given to whining.
Given to whining. That's a great one. I'm going to jump into the given to whining. We have a big supermarket here, Gourmet Glatt, in the 5 towns. So the classic example that I like to give, and I've seen it, and we've all seen it, is mommy goes in with a kid or two to the supermarket to shop for Shabbos on Thursday, and no, mommy, I really want to do it. Mommy, I really want to cook it. Mommy, I really want to do it. Really, 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 right? So that's the whining, complaining, and whining. And the mommy goes, if you shut up at the end and you're nice, I'll give you a cookie, or you'll get the Kinder Egg, the Kinder Eggs, right? Right? And all of a sudden, the kids get quiet and they get the Kinder Egg. What happens is they learned, if I complain and whine enough, I can frustrate mommy, which then could teach her I know how to get a prize. That's the move. It's genius, right? Or kids, another one which is more subtle, they passive aggressively don't hear when they're being called. So, Chaim, come downstairs. We're ready to daven with Zoom with Rebbe. I'm pausing. This is not like a static thing. Chaim, come downstairs. Zoom starting now with Rebbe. Nothing, right? And he hears you, right? Chaim, right? And all of a sudden we lose it, right? So now he knows I don't have to answer until mommy loses it. So I have at least another 10 minutes. Okay? So it's so common for these large and small dynamics to happen with regards to how we reinforce subtly and very big these kinds of things that happen. right? So right now is a very crucial time of that happening because we need to function. We need to go to work. I don't have a choice. I got to get this kid on Zoom, or I got to get them to be quiet and just watch whatever. I can't deal with this. Or let them play longer outside, or let them go to sleep whenever, because I need to function. Yes, that is real, and we cannot fully control that experience. But what we can do is understand what we're reinforcing, prepare ourselves by knowing what we're capable of and accepting that, and then putting in things in place. For example, right, kids who say like, Mommy, can I just get 10 more minutes? Mommy, just 10 more minutes, just 10 more minutes. Now, if we let that go on and then we give it 10 more minutes, that's the cookie in the store. That's the complaining and whining, right? Or we can say, either you can continue complaining and whining and you don't get anything now and you don't get anything more later and just shut it down, right? Which would be your optimal way to do it. Or you can punish them going back to the power dynamic, or they could win because you gave in. Now, how do you know when to give in and not to give in? That is such a fundamental question, and we're going to break that down where there should be much less of that going on because of all the things maybe we can take from this and implement in real time how to do it, okay? So, we're jumping into goals of POP and effective commands, which is just a fun top slide. But I want to explain what that means, okay? So first I'm going to explain POP. POP means process-oriented praising. So when we give over to anybody, really, give over feedback, specifically positive, right? We want to give them things that are not just like, you're excellent, you're amazing. We want to give over things that are really contextual and valuable. So now you can't do that on every single thing, but you can give over things like, great job going over there right away. What does that mean, doing it right away? You're praising the value of listening right away. Or, you're really focusing on your math work right now. That's a great job focusing on your math work, specific of what they're doing. Or let's say they calm down pretty quickly. So you're like, wow, good job controlling yourself right away. Now I use things like right away often, but the point is you want to catch them on the earlier side to be able to focus on like, hey, they're getting reinforcement and recognition of what they're doing properly, which is very fueling, so they can move on from that opportunity, but also gets them to hear you more often rather than it's something negative, stop doing, go to sleep, you're doing it wrong, I told you already 5 times. So we want to shift from you're doing great, you're amazing, Mitsuyan, 100% on a test, right? Versus specific process-oriented praising. Now, it's a very, very effective tool, actually, because if you spend time reinforcing your kids all day long of all the good things they're doing, and then it's time for them to go to sleep, it's much easier to help them say, okay, it's time to go to sleep now, because all day they've been hearing mommy and daddy saying, you did this well, you're good at this, you control yourself this way. Think about that, right? So you're spending all day reinforcing the good things, and then when it's time to give over the things they don't really want to hear, they're able to hear. Okay, so then we jump into effective commands. So effective commands is very important. Forget about the formula of where I put there. I put there command, then count in your head. You have to know your own body language, your own tone. So I'll do it, and then maybe someone can give one back. But if I'd like to see a face or two, so for those who I'm not seeing all the screens, but I'm definitely seeing some screen. So someone will share, Rabbi. So the way you want to give over a command, I did it before, but I'll do it again. So Rabbi, if you could just play along with me for a second, okay? So Rabbi Alt, stand up. Good job standing up. Rabbi Alt, sit down. Great job sitting. Great job. That's funny. Great job standing up and sitting down right away. But what I did do is I was very matter of fact, and I gave over the compliment right away, or the process-oriented praising right away. And I didn't say, can you? I didn't say, do it now. I didn't say you have to. I didn't ask him. I didn't suggest it. None of that. I was very specific. So someone give one to me. Rabbi, don't unmute everyone. I can't, everybody's muted. So if someone wants to try.
Everyone has the ability to unmute themselves.
You could say, Shia Lieber, stop talking.
Funny.
I'm just kidding. It's Alana. Quick.
It's good. It's good. Right. But what's crucial about when you give over effective commands is that you know that your tone is calm, clear, and not with suggestive in language. But when you're thinking about tomorrow morning, like how the heck am I going to get these kids to be in a place where they're going to be listening to mommy? You're going to be in a pretty good place, meaning emotionally. You're going to be prepared for yourself on how you want to get over. And you're not going to use words like, please go downstairs and get ready for davening. You're going to say, it's time to go downstairs now for davening. Or in 2 minutes, davening has started. You need to be downstairs. I don't have a nice way of saying that with my please. And when I say not nice, because I can say things like, please go upstairs right now and I'm going to kill you, which is so nice in how I say that, but it makes no sense. Versus, you need to go upstairs now. So I can say something very nice without the word please. And I can say something really not nice with the word please. So don't overvalue the word please, just like we overvalue the word love. You understand what I'm saying? Okay, so I see some heads, so I see some nods.
But can you go back to the example that you gave earlier with Chaim? You said, Chaim, it's time to come down. Chaim, it's time to come, right?
Yeah.
And he, what, 10 minutes? So what was wrong? What did you do wrong? Was it that you didn't have the FaceTime? Was it that you didn't give him the command directly, that you were yelling up? Like, what was wrong in your command?
Hi, Aviva, and thank you for that feedback and question. So what's wrong with that command is that, A, I don't have his attention. It is harder by not being direct with them. You don't know the level of attention they don't have at that moment because they're playing on a game, they're actually sleeping, they legitimately don't want to hear you. So you want to give over commands in the most direct physical contact way and with clarity. Now, nobody here necessarily has a perfect relationship with their child to be able to give over that command, even in person necessarily, and they're going to be listening the first time. So we have to go back to the effect, before we even start doing effective commands all day and night, we need to be able to do our process-oriented praising to build them up to be able to accept effective commands along the way. Now, this is a one-time parenting in quarantine class and parenting class, so it's a little bit hard to give a more in-depth context of all of that concept. But what is important to take away from this particular set of tools is that you need to have a high level of process-oriented praising for effective commands to be as effective as they can be, because it's hard to listen to somebody who potentially you're in a negative spiral or cycle with, and all of a sudden is giving you all these things to do with a little more authoritativeness. Okay, so know what you're up against in that way. But remember, if you're in a good place, you're giving clear and direct commands, you're giving that process-oriented praising, it is very effective. Okay, now the next slide goes in there, Aviva. So if you go into do's and don'ts, right? So be firm, straight to the point, and mean it. Make sure you have your child's attention. Stay present in the environment. Look for selective attention and working memory. This is very important for younger kids and any children with particular special needs, or maybe have a learning disability or things like that. There maybe have a process issue where they'll take more time to fully understand what you're saying. They may not be able to focus on more than one thing at a time. They may not have the ability to understand what you're saying yet because they're very young. It could depend. Again, and then there's just the relationship dynamic. Okay, now especially in the beginning, give commands that they will likely able to follow. That's why I went with something simple. We're like, Yaakov, throw that in the garbage. Great job doing it right away. That makes you better at giving over commands and giving process-oriented praising. So then you can build up on that. Okay. And then I will go into no I statements. I need you to. Do not say please or thank you. Now, thank you only, please and thank you do belong where they're doing a favor for you. Now, again, this is in the context of trying to rework getting kids to be able to listen, especially during this time. Okay, so for example, if I wanted my son to pass me the ketchup, right, and that's for me, no, I'm going to take respect for a parent out of this equation for a second. So if I said, hey, my son's Benji. Hey, Benji, can you pass me the ketchup? Thanks so much. I appreciate that. That is appropriate because they're doing something for me. But if they're doing something that they need to be doing and or that's required of the house, a chore related to official responsibility of a child should be doing, then you need to get the ketchup for the family, right? So it's not about the ketchup. It's about who it's for or where the context is. Okay. Okay. So.
And in that scenario, Yeshaya, when in that scenario where of you need to get it for the family, it's
Yeah.
not appropriate to say thank you. Isn't that
It's not.
the phrase?
So it's not bad. I'm sorry if I wasn't clear about that. It's not that there shouldn't be a thank you there. It's about what it's about. It's very nice that you did it right away. Is more valuable than thank you. Anyway, right? Nothing wrong with thank you. No one's going to not say thank you anymore. But in the context of building up, getting children to be able to listen more effectively, you want to praise what they're doing, not the mitsuyan on a test that doesn't give them, hey, you put a lot of effort in here. No one's getting COVID. I covered it into my mouth. You're okay. Okay, you gotta be aware of that, where that value is, and you'll get much more out of it there. Okay, so pre-correction, right? So pre-correction, I find, and so far through my career, I find this to be like a nuclear weapon. Why is it a nuclear weapon? Because for just about any kind of child, and I listed at the bottom, and I mean that for ages 0 to 120, really. When we know what's expected of us, we know what's coming, we understand the boundaries, we know what we could potentially prepare for and even practice at times, we're going to be successful. We're going to get through that challenge. We're going to pass, whatever it is. So when a child is getting ready, for example, just in an immediate context, printing out the schedule of the day and having it in a visual place and knowing what it is, and then asking them the following kind of question. Hey, Moshe, so what are the first 3 things you have to do tomorrow for school the night before? And he goes and looks and says, okay, I have davening, I have halacha of the day, and then I have chumash. Well, that's whatever, right? Okay, so you know what you're set up for. Now here's a pre-correction kind of question you could ask to your child. Do you think you want to get those 3 things ready, meaning your siddur, your halacha book, and your chumash ready now, or do you think you want to get it ready in the morning? Now, I would ask that question because we know as parents, we want everything to be ready and organized so we don't have to think about it later and de-stress us, but we want them to think in those terms and be solution-focused about how to prepare ourselves to function better. So some kids will go, Mommy, I think I'll get it ready now. Now, you set them up for that. Or some kids like, I don't care, I'll do it later. That's fine, but you're still setting them up to have the ability to think through that process. For an ADHD kind of child, they'll probably go, I don't care, right? An anxious kind of kid, for sure, will benefit from their own, like, hey, I'll be prepared, and that'll make me feel better. That's just like a preparation component. But if we pre-correct and now a challenging thing, like, I'll give you a very specific example. I was on a Zoom meeting last night with my camp program, the Diamond program, and we were discussing that potentially, if and when we hopefully open, will there be trips? So I said, I don't think that most camps that do get open will probably have any trips. And the camps was like, whoa, what are the kids going to do? So we were pre-correcting even ourselves in that opportunity to say, like, how are we going to help the kids get settled into that? Right now, you're experiencing that. What do you mean I can't go to a store with you, Ma? I'm 11. I help you shop all the time. Stores, at least here, are saying 16-year-olds can't go. They need to be able to understand that context around them. The concept of pre-correction or pre-teaching helps them understand how they and know what's happening and what could be going on and prepare them and settle them into the facts around them so they can be successful. I mean that in tasks, and I mean that in their own emotions. So if I know wow, I'm really going to be home for the rest of the school year, Rabbi Alt. That's really going to happen now. Okay, so I need to emotionally settle into that. I need to logistically settle into that. And that requires some planning and organization. So what do I do to make that successful? I prepare myself as best as I can. I prepare my children as best as I can. I think of fun and creative ways to not be so limited in the things I'm going to do. We're going to get into creativity later. So by doing that, we can make things more successful, specifically for anxious, hyperactive, inattentive, disengaged, low affect, and intense kids. What I mean by specifically the intense kids, a lot of parents will say, my kid goes 0 to 60 in 2 seconds, right? So no kid really is 0 to 60 in 2 seconds. No kid is at 0. Kids who have that higher level of intensity, usually their baseline is somewhere around 30 or 40. Most average people are somewhere around 15, 20. No one is at 0. You're dead if you're 0. So if we know that, and we know that we can prepare, hey, we don't want that explosion. We don't want that tantrum going on. So we're going to prepare them like, hey, guys, we got to be prepared for, I think we're going to be in school here a little bit longer. How do you think you want to do it so we can get through it and be successful and make it fun and even maybe work out some kind of special thing for our family or for you guys? And I would ask those kinds of questions to guide them through that process. So that's why I say this is a nuclear weapon and very, very valuable. Okay? So now we're jumping into structuring the unstructured. Right? So we have pre-correction. We have
Can I interject for 1 minute? When you the example that you gave though, you set them up, you allow them, to either use that time to prepare for the next day, or they may choose not to. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if the next day they find themselves that they didn't follow through, they weren't successful, you gave them something to think about. Did you let it go, or did you bring it up again? Do you bring it up? Do you bring it up as a follow-up? Like, do you think it would have been better if we had done this last night, or you just wait for the next opportunity?
It depends on the dynamic of the kid. If a child feels like their mom is talking to them like, so what would have been better, huh? With all that connotation behind it, which is just guilt, and I wanted you to do it this way, you didn't listen to me. So now, if that's the intention, that's dangerous. But if the intention, if the kind of kid in the relationship is, we're like, so what do you think would have worked out better for you? Like inquisitively, and that's really where it's from, then that could be very helpful. So it's really all about how you're presenting your question and your intention of your question. Because don't think for a second, your child, your spouse, whoever that is in your relationship who knows you, they'll smell it from a mile away. Okay, and again, for certain kids, they're not going to get that. They don't have that ability to really think that far ahead, especially the younger ones. So you'll need to guide them, and that's a managerial issue to help them along the way. So just back to clear expectations. So if we're right now in this big world of unstructured, right, how do we structure those things? And what do we put in place that understanding their limits and boundaries and be realistic about it? Like, honestly, my kids are watching more TV than they ever have in their life. They are, because they can only, right now we're having a lot of wacky weather in town by me. So I'm okay with my kids watching some TV, not a ton, but right now that's the situation that they're in, and I'm comfortable experiencing them watching a little bit more, but I set still very clear expectations and boundaries for them, and I have appropriate consequences set up, like I said before, and that was even my example. If you complain and whine, you lose now, and you lose sometime tomorrow, or maybe all of tomorrow, depending on how it goes for you. So we can be very, very simple if we are very clear and we are realistic about how we handle this now. This is a big conversation also where, so our kids used to go to school from, depending on the school, as early as 7:30 in the morning till as late as 8:30 at night for older kids in high school, if you're a Mishmar or whatever it is. And now kids are in school, younger for sure, they start school at 9:30, they end, a lot of kids are doing their schoolwork pretty quickly, and they're getting done by 1:30. Right? So now what are our kids doing from 1:31 to 7:30, 8 o'clock? And why should they even go to, if they want to sleep at 7 o'clock, but they don't have to be up now. There's a whole hour and a half earlier. So what should they be doing? So we want to be realistic about it. We want to put things in place that make sense, and we want to put timelines and boundaries on them in a way that don't feel restrictive, but feel like we're moving them along through their day. You know, yesterday I took my son, it was beautiful. I took him on a bike ride, right? It was great. So it gave us the opportunity to extend the day because I took him at 12 o'clock. We didn't get back till 2 o'clock. So his day, instead of ending at 1:30, it ended at 3:30. And that was fine. But we did plan it a little bit to make it function so it could work. Now, for some kids, that may not work. Tomorrow, it's going to be pouring rain. We'd have to come up with a plan for that. But every day could be different, right? Now, I went on to say create a mini system and possible incentive privilege system if needed. There are some kids who will need that. And I'm going to quickly just add a caveat to incentive and privilege system. So a lot of parents do it, but they feel like they're bribing their kids. So why is an incentive system a bribe? It's only a bribe if the work to privilege or incentive ratio is off. Meaning, if your child does their schoolwork, does 15 minutes, here's a regular time, forget about Corona, does their homework for 15 minutes and then gets to watch 2 hours of TV, that's a bribe, okay? But if your child does their homework, does everything they're supposed to be doing, has a good attitude, and then gets 30 minutes of TV, that's an incentive. Just so we get some heads. Is that clear?
What about if you set it up ahead of time? If you let the child know ahead of time, this is what you need to do, and you do it, this is what you get. I don't think that's a bribe. Do you agree?
I agree. That's not a bribe. That's great. But not every kid is able to do that. And in some cases, we do need to add incentives right now. And I think this is a time where all of a sudden, things that were never considered a privilege, they were really entitlements, are now privileges. My own example is taking my kids to Dunkin' Donuts drive-through just became a privilege where it would be like a cute Sunday morning thing that they would get to do with their mother. And now it's like the biggest deal because there's nothing else for them to do, right? So we have to put that in context of what's the value there. Now, for kids who could be struggling, for them to be sitting in front of a Zoom for 30 minutes may be very unrealistic. So we have to know what that really means. Now, I'm going to go into that specific issue of the school, virtual school, homeschool expectations soon, but I want to make that clear in terms of structuring and unstructured. So just to give a quick example, by setting up our day with real boundaries and timelines of when things should be done, expected, giving the proper breaks through the day, giving them some things along the day that are motivating and again, potentially privileges or incentives, doing short-term, mid-term, and even long-term, meaning short-term would be that end of the day watching or playing outside. That's a higher level privilege that you're comfortable with. The long-term being like a special Sunday Dunkin' Donuts trip. And then long-term, when Corona gets out, we're going to Disney World. You know, like, I don't mean that literally. I mean, but what's something bigger that they're valuing, or that prize that they could earn on Amazon and they can get points towards, okay? So you have to have a real way of setting them in so they could feel grounded. Now, by doing this kind of system in place does really ground our children. And I don't know about you, but I'm speaking to a lot of clients and kids in the schools that I work in, and everybody's trying to find ways to get through. And one of the most important things actually now is the schooling and expectations that are going in that help them function. So although it may be a challenge to do it, this does keep us grounded. Seeing your teacher, seeing your rabbi, seeing your community, even virtually, is grounding and helps. So don't underestimate that. Okay, so the next slide is creativity. What does that really mean? Creativity doesn't mean being artistic necessarily. It means being able to figure things out when we're stuck. And this is a time when we're stuck, right? So we have to think about, how do we handle that there is limitations to what we can and cannot do, and finding a way through that? You know, in my camp program, when we want to make something exciting that's not as exciting, now we don't oversell something, but we touch on the more minor details of what they are and what the values of those things are. Like, yeah, going to the beach is awesome, and as an adult sometimes you like that, and for some kids it's not a big deal. Or you feel like, oh my gosh, the beauty of sitting on the beach, touching your feet in the sand, throwing around the football on it, seeing the amazing buildings across what it is, putting your feet in the sand and feeling the water. Like, you got to sell the fun things around the little thing that you think is not a big deal, right? So that's being creative. It doesn't mean having 17 art projects for them to be busy with. It means figuring out what's the value. Don't just play with Legos for 15 minutes, but build something really big that takes multi-day time to do it. And then this grand big castle that you made, or going outside and playing basketball and then doing drills and then doing playing a game of horse and then making like those ideas is what's creative. To not feel like you're stuck nowhere. Going on those great walks and then picking new adventures of where you're walking. I did a tour of parking lots last week with my son on his bike. We went on every parking lot within 4 blocks. Like, I'm not a very creative guy, but that's being creative when we're here and being stuck. So very important. So how do we navigate our way through these challenging and uncertain times, right? So that's why I wrote the fruit usually doesn't fall far from the tree, right? It's right there. So we have to know how we get through that will only make a difference for our kids. Okay. So keep the kids busy while at home is the next slide, right? So that was a cute little thing. But actually, what's funny about this slide, if we need to show it, hold on, let me pull it up. I'll just put it up in the picture. It's one of these little cute memes, right? Right? The reason why that works is because that's actually setting a boundary for the kids to know, like, this is a very common one for younger kids. They want 87 snacks all day. Every 7 minutes, they need a snack. In class with Mora, they never got a snack 87 times a day. They got a snack. They had breakfast in the morning. They had a snack, 2 snacks. I see 2 hands, right? Right. So we have to be realistic about what makes sense. So be strong about that the kitchen's closed. Here's the store. Oh, you're very nice. Only 3 snacks. Thank you very much. Right. So be real about that, because you're going to make yourself crazy and that will stress you out. Okay. Okay. This is a very important slide, and this is about empathy, and this is very important for younger kids. So empathy generally means to be able to be in someone else's shoes and to understand where they're from. But the deeper and more effective part of empathy really is to help the person really feel like they know what they feel. And for younger kids, that has a lot more to do with matching their emotion, meaning their actual emotion, not what they're believing. For example, if something is not fair, right? And a little kid will be like, "It's not fair, mommy, it's not fair," right? But we know that whatever's going on is fair or is okay, but their emotionality is very high. The real empathy for them meets them at that level of intensity. For example, so if Moshe's freaking out and we jump in and we're like, "Wow, Moshe, that is a lot," right? So I hope everybody can see that. That's a very important part, that we're understanding how we match their intensity, not that their emotionality is off, because it's not. Okay? Again, I'm going to say that again. We have to match their intensity and not their potential skewed perception of things. Okay? By bringing them to a place of understanding. So if, let's say, wow, Moshe, that is a lot. You look really, really upset about this. It really seems like you're having a hard time, that it feels really unfair. Okay? So by saying that, the initial, most of the time for most kids is like, "Yeah, mommy, it really is. It really seems like you're having a hard time with that. So what do you think would make sense for you to work it out?" Now, I don't want to necessarily come up with a solution from them, but I will ask them questions. I'm suggesting this for you guys. Ask them questions to help them along the way to feel like they're being supported through them figuring it out. Don't be so quick to jump in and fix their problem. That's actually counterintuitive, because then you're reinforcing negative behavior, which is their complaining and whining and their intensity.
Shai, can you give an example of the wrong way to do it? The skewed emotion that you said?
No, Rabbi, I'm sorry, I'm perfect. I can't do that. I only know how to do it the proper way. Okay. So if Moshe's like, "It's not fair, it stinks." So I would quickly be like, "Okay, which part?" "Oh yeah, it's not fair, totally not fair." And then I would take that thing away from Chani because she stole it from him. And then he's vindicated and feels like, "Haha, mommy got Chani." and that she's unfair, and then you just started World War 42, and it's only day 13 of quarantine, right? So it's really, it's a catch-22 versus, hold on, whoa, Moshe, this is a lot. Look at you. You're having such a hard time with how unfair you feel this is. And again, I clarified how he felt, and my energy and my tone is all about matching how he's feeling at this time. It's funny how this part of empathy, at least for me personally, was discovered. We had a boy in our program a bunch of years ago, maybe 15 years ago, who we could not connect with. And he was extremely emotional, and we didn't understand where it would come from, and we couldn't help him calm down. So one day I just got really upset internally. I was just really frustrated, and I jumped in his face, and I said, I'm like, Morty, I don't understand what you're feeling. Can you try to explain it? And he goes, I know, right? And he calmed down. And I was like, that's weird. That was strange. Because all I asked him was to understand it, but that's been asked 150 times. The only difference was that I was as frustrated as he was in the moment. And that's what connected to him. And working on that concept for children specifically, or in that state of high intensity, right? Or things that are really, their perception of what they believe is unfair is so far off, there's a big value behind that. Excuse me, 2 seconds. Sorry about that. So I would really take that into consideration. And then I put on the bottom, practice this through experience. And it's not something that you're going to just conceptualize, have, and now, and then you'll be able to do. You have to really hone in on yourself and notice that what's happening, and go slow. Do not expect that this is going to happen right away, because connecting with a child when they're particularly having a hard time is hard enough, and then to be able to jump in here, but it has a lot of value. Okay, so the next slide is to catch them if you can. Right now, if we put pre-correction.
One more question about that last
Sure.
point. Is it better? Meaning, if the emotion is so skewed that you're finding it challenging to be authentic in your response, is it better not to try it at all, or like, how do you deal with that issue?
Can you just repeat it one more time?
Moshe is freaking out, and but it's for something that is totally ridiculous for him to be so upset about.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard for you to really show that emotion in your response in an authentic way. So you're going to be faking it. Is that like a dangerous thing that you should be avoiding, or?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would be careful of faking it, because most children, if not all children, will pick up on fake. But also you can tap in to, it's not about whether you believe them or not. It's about, this is the issue. She is having the hard time, and that is real for them. So tap into, regardless that you think that Laffy Taffy just changed your life forever, because that's ridiculous, but your emotionality is real to you. So wow, that is so hard that you are having this level of a hard time because of that candy. That is hard. And that's not fake.
I hear you.
So there's a big value in tapping into what that is. You know, a lot of times, and this goes back to fundamental attribution error, that would be our own, right? Our own judgment until, like, are you freaking kidding me? This is Laffy Taffy. Stop it. Right? Because our belief system is like, that's a joke. This is a joke. But really, it's not that the Laffy Taffy is. Of course, it doesn't make sense. But struggling there for that moment, their emotionality, their intensity that's off, we have to recognize that. Okay, so catch them if you can. So we want to recognize the early signs of what's happening. You know, if they woke up a little bit irritated, you notice that first tone from them, like, okay, I'll do it soon. We want to catch them early to be able to not get to that higher level where they're having that maybe explosive or over the top or inappropriate reaction. We want to help them shift the child when they are in a lower state of frustration or irritability. And by doing that, we can stay solution focused. And that was that kind of the way I asked questions like, wow, so Moshe, looks like you're a little frustrated right now. What do you think how do you think you can figure out that that your Rebbe's not calling on you in the Zoom class. This is a big one, by the way. Getting a lot of feedback on that the kids are expected to be called on, because naturally in class, right, you're able to manage. There's a bunch of people in the class. I don't know, there's 53 people in here right now, right? If we were in a room with 53 people physically, I could absolutely look at 15 or 20 of you at the same time, or I could see some hands go up. I can't see hands that go up. I'm only looking at one screen. I'm focused on my giving over the material to you. So, but together we can do that. So it's hard for kids. So how do we then do that? How do we then recognize for that boy or girl, hey, this is frustrating for you, and not get to the place where, like, I want to slam the computer down and not enter a Zoom ever again because Mora or Rebbe or teacher never called on me. So that's where we have to do that. Now the solution focus would be asking, like, hey, how do you think you do that? Hey, in Zooms you can message people and and say, like, hey, jumping in, is it possible if you can call on Chaim? Or email them later and say, hey, in the future, can you just get an opportunity to call on my son or my daughter, right? Those are some things, which gives them a way to feel like, okay, mommy's got my back or daddy's got my back, and then hopefully the teacher can recognize them the next time we're going on. So that's a pretty common thing. But our goal there, by catching them early, is to not let that get to that higher level of intensity or blow up or whatever that is, but to then also shorten, having it less frequent, reducing the intensity and shortening duration. Okay, so the new normal versus the old normal, right?
Can I ask a question?
Sorry.
Sorry, let me start my video. So my son has bilateral hearing loss.
Okay.
It's been extremely challenging because in school he wears an FM system. So
Sure.
now, and his class is particularly an interactive teacher with all the kids. So he's extremely frustrated and not wanting to even go on to school because he's not copying the information at all. And I mean, I don't even know like where to start. And then my other son, ADHD, and has been having seizures. So it's been complicated. I'm a single parent also on top. So, I spoke to the teachers, like, what are we supposed to do? Because both of my kids get services out, extra services during school that they're not getting now.
Yeah.
Then you've got in the class with my son with hearing loss, other kids are sitting there holding babies in their lap during the class. So I requested, can you please ask the parents, So all these noises, right? All these noises. So normal FM with the hearing aids, my son hears 85%. Now, he was in public school till 2nd grade, and he's pretty smart, but he's basically giving up on it.
That is very hard and a recipe for a very spicy experience on a daily basis. The first thing that just came to my mind would be maybe he needs to go to school in the following way. Not at regular hours, but have the teachers record the Zooms and then share with them after the fact. And he'll just have his own timeline of when he takes his own class, number one. And either, by the way, that could be for both kids, and specifically with children with difficulties or attention issues. I know a lot of schools are trying to find ways to break the material down into small groups, doing alternate days to have, also small things like that, or recording them and sending them out. But that is a very legitimate challenge. Even if they're recording, if I'm thinking about it auditorially, right, and there's all that noise, it makes it hard. I know a lot of schools are working on just kind of what we're doing here. Everybody's muted. The teacher gives over the material. Every once in a while, kids jump in, right? But it is complicated.
I asked the teacher if they could do that. There's only 6 kids, including my son, in that class. And he said no. He said he can't do it that way because the teaching style has always been interactive.
Yeah.
So I guess the recording thing is not necessarily a bad idea, but then they have like chavrusa. See what I'm saying? Also, is a 5th grade class.
He's a 5th grade. That is a huge challenge. I don't have like a concrete answer for you other than really knowing and not just knowing the reality, but being realistic with yourself and for your son of what he can get out of it, and maybe finding a way that someone could supplement some of that time and really, really connecting to his frustration of what that is. Not just like as if he wishes he can be on the Zoom all day, but that this is something that is a challenge. Like, it's already, he has a challenge.
I mean, I spoke to the Rebbe who's like pulls them out for like 30 minutes a day.
Yeah.
And he called my son. He's actually the 6th grade teacher. And he explained to him he's not the only one that's having trouble. He has kids that are having trouble, which did help. But at the end of the day, what should my expectations be from the school? Meaning the school was providing 30 minutes a day one-on-one.
Yeah.
At this point, they're unable to do that. How can I mean, he's going to just be lost, basically. I can't teach my son Mishnah and Gemara. I don't know it.
Right. That is a huge question. Do you find that do you know yet if the recorded Zoom at another time is possible? If there's somebody who could supplement completely and teach him one-on-one?
There's definitely not someone that could do it completely. And then his teacher has 11 kids, so I don't know how much they can do and not do,
Yeah. So these are this is a real challenge that is exactly the intensity and seriousness of what's happening right now.
Right. So how do I keep him motivated? So I say, well, why don't you just sit and listen?
Yeah.
I'll let the teacher know, like, you're not copying it, but at least you're listening, but then he gets frustrated because he's like one of these kids that wants to like know it,
Yeah. Okay. So good. So what does he value? What are the things he really likes?
He loves learning Torah, period.
Learning Torah, period. Is there somebody he likes to learn or something he likes to learn that he could get or earn the time to be doing with?
What do you mean by that?
Like,
I don't have someone that.
I'm about to get you in trouble, so I don't mean this literally, but I'm giving you an example.
His own son.
Okay, well, let's say any rabbi, right? Let's say Rabbi Feiner, big rabbi in my community, right? And he loves Rabbi Feiner, and you say to him, listen, this is the hardest thing, to be able to concentrate as much as possible with everything that you have. You're a rock star. You're unbelievable. I don't know how you're doing this, and I love you, and you're amazing. If you could keep it together as much as you can, and I really mean it, like our expectations are not through the roof, we'll work out that you'll get some chavrusa time with Rabbi Feiner, and like, that's gold.
Right.
And motivate him in that way, because reality is, this is going to still be hard for him, and it's not going away. But like anything that's a challenge in life, we do need some kind of reward at the end. We all hopefully are working or some version of that right now, right? A lot of people are not working. But the satisfying feeling of after we finish our job is we get paid, and we get maybe some hopefully constructive feedback of like, I really appreciate you working, putting in all this effort. Here's your paycheck, your bonus, your acknowledgement of what you do, right? So we have to apply that here for him. You're like, what's your son's name, if I may ask? First name. Aaron, you're a freaking rock star with this. Like, how many kids will you be in the position to be able to handle this challenge, and you still want to learn?
So I do that a lot because, I mean, for a kid that's experienced a lot with his disability and a lot of trauma, he happens to know like Mishnayos and Gemara Baal Peh, which I never expected him to know, being with the hearing.
Maybe you're doing. This is the other side of this coin. Maybe you're doing better than you think.
Well, I'm trying to reinforce positive reinforcement or whatever, but the thing is like, when he's sitting on the Zoom, he's coming out and saying, I'm not getting it. You know what I mean? I'm sitting there trying to help him, and I don't get it. So how am I? You know what I mean?
I think you have to focus on encouraging him, focusing on whatever you do, and that's Lishma is great, and he's going to get as much as he can, and you're going to have to be okay with that level and keeping that expectation. I think you got to be very real about it. I want to jump into this, and then we're going to be finishing up the presentation, and we'll jump into questions as much as possible. So the new normal versus the old normal. Challenges, underlying issues that existed BC, before Corona, are likely to be exacerbated under such stress, right? We just gave a great example of this boy Aaron, right? This is unfortunately a really perfect example, right? Everybody reacts differently under stress, change, and uncertainty, right? People are going to be more irritable. People are going to have a shorter fuse. People are not going to be not sleeping well. People are changing their eating habits for good or bad. All kinds of things are happening to us as we go. But we are also settling into this at the same time, right? We're hearing new little things happening every day that we're hearing. So in your community, you're just finding out that you're not going back to school, right? So now you have a few days, so to speak, to start preparing yourselves of what that looks like. Here's the good news. Our weather is getting better, so we can be outside more. We can find ways to just be okay with that this is hard. You know, validating that for yourselves and getting that support from your spouse, from your parent, your own parent, from your own kids, from your friends, from your rabbi, from wherever you can find it. If you need to laugh, if you need to cry, if you want to throw up, you want to punch something, do all those things. Because this is unfortunately new and it's not going the way we wished it would, right? Everybody keeps saying we wish there was a switch to turn back on. That's not happening. But we can accept the things we can control and work around being creative and not get stuck. So that's where our value is of this new normal, okay? It's not all about us, being honest about ourselves. This is very important, especially when we are stressed and our kids are triggering us. We hear something about our job that makes us more stressful, or the lack of our job that's even more, right? And we just can't help ourselves, right? Being appropriately vulnerable, right? And even saying to your kids, like, I don't know what's going to be happening, but I do know that we are here together and we're going to get this. We're going to do this and we're going to be okay. Even if in the moment we feel like we're not going to be okay, you're going to see that we're going to be okay because we have to be okay. So you're going to take their arm and you're going to shake and you know that you're going to be okay because we don't have another way to do that. It's not just about that we can say the right things or the wrong things. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to lose it. It's going to happen. But if we can own that and they can be part of that in a age-appropriate level, right? We're not crossing boundaries in that way, but we're being okay with ourselves. Our kids will be so much more grounded about this. It's incredible to hear the questions they ask and the feedback we're all getting. We're hearing from our friends, the cute videos that are going on online about the little things that are happening. It's fascinating, right? But you can be okay and be worried at the same time. That's now what's happening. So don't underestimate that that's happening, okay? The next one I go into, maybe I should have outsourced school, right? Because it really is this challenge. Someone gave it, I don't have the questions in front of me, Rabbi, but one of the questions was this huge dynamic, and a lot of what we've been talking about really answers a lot of the questions you did share about that. I have a 6-year-old, a 15-year-old, a girl, a boy, and I have struggling with educational issues, motivational issues, attentional issues, and technological issues, all going on, and I have to work, and my husband has to work, right? How do we do that all? That goes back to what are our expectations for our school, right? So that's the next slide. Managing expectations in virtual school and home, right? What's our school expectations? Our schools are not really telling us like what they want. They're just sort of unspokenly saying like, here's the work and do it. Now, as schools are going on, they're finding different ways to require different levels of expectations. I noticed personally with my kids' school, they changed, like you have to be dressed a certain way, changed after Pesach versus before Pesach. There wasn't any official dress code, and they made a dress code for Zooms. If you didn't hand in certain things, it was considered that you didn't do it. And that makes sense to me, right? But for younger kids, that may not be possible. But there's another part, which is what are our real expectations? So about this boy, Aaron, we need to know that, sorry, I'm picking on Aaron, but it is a really great example. We have to know his expectations of what he is capable of doing under those circumstances. Or for a boy with real ADHD, or for a girl who's struggling with her anxiety right now at a higher level, right? What can she actually do? Could she only do math and chumash because that's what she's capable of doing? Then that's an expectation. Why should we look externally to what other people are doing because they're doing hashtags on social media, rocking homeschooling, virtual school? What we see there is not real. It's not real. Right? We know that anyway, that in social media, that the world is posting fake things. I don't mean fake news, but what the reality of what the struggle is. So know for yourself, just because someone is making it look pretty and nice, it's not pretty and nice. The frustration and the struggle and the ups and downs and the losing and pulling out my hair is all happening, right? It's all happening. So we have to know, what do we really want? What are we really okay with our kids? Forget about the school's expectations for a second. Forget about what our friends in our communities think we should be doing or shouldn't be doing. Our homes are our homes, and we need to know what's good for us. No one else. So I'm really just telling you that, like, know that, right? Be real honest with yourselves. That's going to be what's going to create the success. So for Aaron, he's going to be doing a little bit of learning with the Rebbe as much as he can, and then maybe he'll get a special time that will bring him up. And all that'll do will keep him connected to when things get back to normal, he'll be ready to go. And if he has to make up some time, he'll make up some time. Okay, and I don't mean time like he's punished. I mean time like he'll have to work on those Gemara skills a little bit more. I don't, what's your name? You are Joyce. Joyce, you look like you want to say something, Joyce.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm going to give you the teacher's point of view.
Please.
Just that I have said to my parents, and one of them is here and she can vouch for me, it's like, here's the work, here's what we're doing each day. You have your packets, you know your family, you know your child, you do what you can do, and you have all summer. You know, if you don't do it now, if you don't do it tonight, that's fine.
Yeah.
Do it over the weekend. Do it Sunday. Today, I don't have class with them on Friday.
Right.
Do it Thursday. Do it Friday. Do what's best for you and your family.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
And it's first grade. So
yeah, and Joyce, that's wonderful that you're having that attitude. What comes with that, and depending on your own child, right, was, do we need to have that timeline for them to accomplish something because they're the kinds of kids who will never get to do it, or are the kids who do need that? So then we take your awesome attitude and openness to handling that, and then put my kid in place and go, okay, but my kid, he needs to know that he has to get it done by Thursday, and
that's
summer.
a family decision. That's
yeah.
You know, and that's that. But as far as the recorded meetings, I did get 2 requests for that. And you know what? My lessons are interactive.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a mini lesson and then we do work together. And I don't lecture. And if I'm going to have to lecture for a half an hour or an hour, I don't think that would keep anyone's attention, you know, no matter what I do. But regardless, all is good.
Yeah.
And I'm enjoying this. Thank you.
Fantastic.
So one of the things, Joyce, that I want to add is that for my younger one, Pinchas, that does have ADHD, he took the day off today. He had a seizure yesterday. He has been having seizures. We don't know why. So he took the day off. And I contacted the teacher, which is Mrs. Madden, and I said, you know, this is what's going on. She sent me the entire week of what he has to do. She said, if you can't come on, this is what we're doing. Do as much as you can.
Right.
He's 2nd grade.
Right. I work a lot with her. We talk a lot. Yes.
Yeah. But that's
She's
what
helped
he needs.
me a lot, technology-wise. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and that's what he needs. So you made a decision for him. That's probably best, Rebecca, and good for you.
That's good.
I spoke to someone in the administration, and I told them what's going on. There's some medical issues and other stuff. I felt that he needed a break.
Yeah. Okay, so we're just about finished, and I want to share the last slide for fun, and then I'll explain why. But if you can see the last one, I think it comes in backwards, but it says, here's Sue, 31 years old, homeschooling her kids for the last 5 days. Great job, Sue. Keep it up. You see the picture, right? That's funny, right? Because it's a real challenge. It's very hard. It's so frustrating. Working, being a mom, being a dad, being a teacher, being a cook, being a cleaner, and just what in the world is happening with our world, right? But if you also see, if you have the slide, I spelled it wrong, right? I actually spelled it by accident wrong. And I bring that up because I'm not a good speller at all. I still spell terribly, even with spell check. And my point is that my wife was just like reviewing it. She's like, you spelled that wrong. I'm like, I'm leaving it in. Because who cares? That's not the point, right? We're going to mess up. Where are our expectations? your expectation of me was to make sure that I give over information that could be helpful to you, not whether I spelled something right or not. So when we're going to finish here and you're going to go home and you're going to take these ideas and tools, you're going to mess up. You're going to make mistakes. You're not going to be as the way you wish, but that's not the point. The point is to try to do the best you can under these circumstances, because there's nothing else to be done. And if you settle on that and you own that, and you could then put in a few of these ideas, you'll be that much better off, and you'll feel really good, and your kids will be okay. So go slow, go easy, really be okay with yourself, take care of yourself, laugh a lot, watch some fun things, eat some delicious food, go for fun walks, bike ride, whatever you got to do, do it. Okay, Rabbi, I am up to questions.
Okay, just before you jump into the Q&A, I just want to wish you a huge thank you. I found this session to be tremendously helpful personally, and I'm sure everyone here benefited. And I know a lot of people are not going to be able to stay, because it's already getting late. So I just wanted to get that in there before you jump into the Q&A. But
Ready.
Take it away.
Okay, so I'm going to just jump to my phone because that's where the questions were, so I apologize.
Yeah, and I invite everybody to unmute themselves to be able to say something. Try to give others a chance and to be, respectful in terms of the amount of time.
Okay, so I'm gonna go through these, some of the questions that the rabbi shared, and then we'll take one or two from there. I'm not gonna pick all of them. I'm gonna pick the ones that I think that are gonna be most relevant and how it can be helpful, right? So here's a question. How do we deal with online school for a clickaholic kind of kid, constantly touches buttons and tries to figure out things, work on the computer, tried to disable the computer, and it didn't really work, and then they throw a tantrum, right? So there, we need to set up very clear expectations, and then maybe make using the computer a privilege. Number one. So it is, if we can think about this for a second, they could be doing nothing in their room with no toys, zero, not even getting to be around other people, but to be with your teacher and Rebbe and to see your friends and to see them and to learn something fun is actually a privilege. This computer, I'm going to shake it, right? This computer is mommy's and daddy's, so you need to treat it with respect, and that's the pre-correction of the computer. If you're going to abuse it and misuse it, then you won't have the privilege of touching the computer. And maybe they'll have to be put away, or it'll require a little bit more managing in order to do that. And then if they do it properly, then you can incentivize that they are controlling themselves, because that's ultimately what they're doing, to be able to handle that. My daughter personally, she's a clickaholic. She loves touching things. And she did. She lost going on a class, and she had to make it up at a different time, and she hasn't touched her fingers on the computer in 4 days, because that's what happened 5 days ago. And I had to deal with that, and I wasn't sure what was happening in that moment. So I'm actually glad that happened to me, and I had to see how that would go. But that's maybe something that happens to a lot of kids at different levels. There was another question about unmotivated kids. I want to jump to that one. Let me just find that question. Here. How do we teach a child or preteen or teenager about the natural consequences and maybe being indifferent or having a lot of apathy? So the issue there is that teenagers are complicated with this, right? So right now, they're in general, a lot of teenagers struggle with just being indifferent and really having no care for a lot of things, and they just are numbed out. And that's just a pervasive issue in teenagehood in the world. And now, if I'm just giving like a real example, if I'm just a kid who doesn't really have a sleep schedule anymore and just is up in my room on my phone watching Netflix all day and night or playing video games all day and night, so my brain is numbed out, I don't really have value or care for certain things. So how do I make value? So that has a lot more to do with modeling and creating appropriate boundaries versus jumping into overly consequencing teenagers. Big war you're asking for by consequencing teenagers down that road of wanting them to follow the expectations when it comes to specifically religion. By forcing them to come downstairs to daven right now, right? And that's not something that they're constantly used to or part of, and now they're doing that, and you haven't set that up in your life in general, and you didn't set that up 6 weeks ago when quarantine happened, that makes it very complicated. But as a parent, and you're downstairs on a scheduled basis, davening and doing that in a not like out loud for the whole family to hear, Ashrei Yoshvei, right? Like that's just passive aggressive and condescending. So that doesn't help them. But like jumping in there and say like, hey, this is what our family does. This is our value, and it's important to us that we daven to Hashem every day, and we do it in a timely manner. It'd be awesome to see you downstairs, right? Now, that may not even happen, but to try to then find other ways to connect to your child, at times like Shabbos is a great time, not through tefillah, but like an unbelievable story around Chumash that maybe you can connect with them with, and then that brings them into your world of something Torah related or the spirituality of what it is. That's your ticket, not forcing them. And not now natural consequences for things like that come with, like, hey, if you're not participating in school, you fail. You don't do the following things in our house that are foundationally expected of you, cleaning up your room, being at school in the time you're supposed to be doing, then you lose those privileges. What's the main thing for teenagers? Their phone, those kinds of things. So yeah, it's possible you'll need to be taking away their privileges. For example, I learned something new, is that now if you have like a smarter Wi-Fi system in your house, you have the ability to shut off Wi-Fi specific devices. You could or prioritize devices. So you could actually internally just remove their ability to do that. Or a lot of times parents will call up AT&T and remove their service from their child's phone. So it becomes like an iPod Touch or whatever it is, because they're not doing that. But very important when it comes to those kinds of consequences, that it is not about the emotionality that you're frustrated, and you have to be real about that, but about that this is what's going on for you, Jake, because you're having a hard time following rules that are beneficial for you to function, to be successful, to be responsible as a family member or past school. I have a client right now, particularly, who is very much failing out of school. He was failing out of school in December, and he's in 12th grade. And now Corona only exacerbated what's going on. So we were in session today, and I said to him, I said, listen, at the end of the day, I could say whatever I want. They could threaten you with failure, but it's really on you. You're a 12th grader. You're almost an adult. Like, either you're going to do the work or you're not going to do the work, and you'll graduate high school. You'll be able to go to college. You'll be able to get a job, or you won't. And ultimately, that's going to be your decision. How you want to go about getting the work done and structuring that, that's something we can work out. But the ultimate decision of like, hey, do I value actually graduating, or do I value going to Chumash class? It's not even about valuing. Do I value finishing, accomplishing, doing? That's what we're talking about. Okay, let's jump into a question. Go ahead.
Hi, Shaya. Okay, so what happens when you have a kid who's addicted?
This is
Everybody's on, and then you're muted. So go ahead. Try it again. You're muted, Shoshana, still. There you go.
Okay. What happens when you have a kid who, in essence, I mean, you can't say an 8-year-old necessarily has an addiction, but they're almost addicted to their iPad or to a screen. And now, whereas before, this whole thing would have been, very fine, Kobe would only get it from, say, 8 to 8:30.
Yeah.
And that was like, it was very limited because that it's something your child's predisposed to. Whereas now you're forced to allow your child on a screen, whereas before they were getting maybe a half an hour a day. Now they're getting 2 to 3 hours a day. And it's just feeding that addiction.
So there's I see that as two things, because even with my kids, their screen time increased, 2,000%, right, from whatever we had it at. So number one is that I would really differentiate if they're doing work on an iPad versus playing on an iPad. The only difference, right? It's not the only difference. The stimulation of the game or the TV or the movie that they're watching or the game that they're playing is different than the paying attention to the teacher, Rebbe, and work being done. So it is stimulating to be on a device for sure, but over time that kind of we get used to that. So we have to understand what the stimulation is. The stimulation is really the excitement, the endorphins that go on in our brain that make us sort of addicted to that device. So if we create very clear boundaries about the how the device is used, right? And then we really do not let that other time even remotely happen, and we include how they're handling their emotions during that time, we can manage that issue. So as long as that's in place, it is manageable. But if there is a lot of that back and forth, complaining and whining, irritability, tantruming, and there is some reinforcement going on, still, even though they're required to use that device. You get what I'm saying?
I think so, but it also like plays into the count of like, now that it's almost like punishing myself to take it away, because when I do take it away now, it's like the tantrums and the grumpy face. It's like he sits there going, it's like you could just kind of picture it.
Yeah, sure.
And he's just like the most miserable, irritable. I want to strangle him.
So watch. So if I pre-correct him, what's your son's name, if I can ask? Covey. So Covey, you know, when the iPad listen to how I'll say this. When the iPad needs to be taken away because you can't handle yourself appropriately, I'm going to pause. I did not include myself in any language. It's all about what he did and why he got it taken away. Okay? You become very irritable and disrespectful in how you act. So what's going to happen is that if you handle it in that way, you potentially will get more time off of the device. How you handle yourself when you lose the device or when it's time to be finished with it will determine the next time, if you get it, how much you get it, when you get it. So if you could set him up for that plan and even practice it. So by the way, I would do it on a Shabbos. And when I mean practice it, take something that's a book, right? That's the fake iPad. And do it then, because there's no way to like find his way into using the device, and practice that modeling of it. And like, look, you can do it. You're handling it. Fantastic. And then do it on Sunday or Monday, whatever it is. And then you get into the process-oriented praising. Covey, look how you just handled yourself when the time was up. Now, I also like to use, when time is up for devices, I like to use external times, like oven timers, things like that. Have them have more auditory and visual aids of time being up, not mommy's voice, time is up. It's already an issue. Oh, mommy's doing it. Mommy's doing it. It's not mommy doing it. It's life says time is up. The bus stopped, we get off. Not the driver told me to get off. Okay. 2 more questions.
Can I make a comment? One thing I think that wasn't touched on tonight that's important is as if our kids see us stressing, our stress is just going to go right onto them. So since the beginning of this, you know, I've sort of played it down. Like, hey, everyone's in the same boat right now. And the overreacting that I'm seeing from parents, because like Shoshana and I, for example, work in a play group, you know, so got questions like, what does our kids like to eat for lunch, you know?
Yeah.
And they're all overwhelmed on how to, you know, handle the change. But I think it's important as parents to try to remain calm and collected, because if we don't, our kids are feel all of our emotions.
So Rebecca, thank you for bringing it up. We did address it actually in 2 ways. And one was about how we are as ourselves and recognizing that as we go. And then that vulnerability and working that through. And then I'll throw in that context of creativity. Like, how do we get creative for ourselves to make things be okay in this moment as best as possible for what it is? So yes, what we do has a tremendous impact on our kids' functioning. If we lose it, halavai, what they're going to deal with. But you can't not lose it. You're going to lose it. Don't think for a second you're not going to lose it. Even in front of them, right? Some people will have it in control, but you think kids can't read your face? They can't read that you keep it together? I'll be the first one to admit that I lost it on my kids a few times over the last 6 weeks. But I also made sure to have conversations with them about, yeah, this is a wacky time. Corona stinks. And we got to figure out ways to be able to handle ourselves even when we're upset. And then I watch my kids lose it sometimes. But that doesn't mean that they're not functioning. It doesn't mean that we're not being successful. It means that we're human beings and we sometimes will lose it. And when we're real and honest, that's when we feel grounded. That's when we feel secure. That's when the next time makes it easier or less than. Okay, one more question, guys.
I have a question. Okay. Okay, so I know we talked about having real expectations. What are our values, real expectations, but what about, I mean, I just want to focus on the word responsibility. So I'm dealing with a middle schooler. Who's responsible? Am I responsible to make sure that, you know, expectations aside, school's expectations, my expectations, I want him to understand the meaning of responsibility. So is it my responsibility to make sure that he is attending class and doing his work? Is it his responsibility to make sure that he is attending, you know, like I'm trying to avoid power plays.
Yeah.
At the same time, how do you balance that? You know, my value is being responsible.
So first of all, it's a general question for your son. Like, does he generally have the underlying value of like, I value the responsibility of school? It's very typical that kids do not have the value we wish they would have. And it's normal.
No, I think he does. I think he does have the value, but I think that when things are challenging, there's this, again, this is his particular challenge. I'm sure he's not alone, but this is his particular challenge, is if I pretend, if I forget, or if I don't do it, and you know, like it'll just go away. You know, like
he's avoiding through time.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. You know.
So, but that's not reality. So reality needs to be, and it is a good question, who is responsible ultimately? Will the teacher hold him legitimately accountable? Or are you two? So that's just a logistical question you need to ask your teacher. Like, hey, I'm comfortable backing you up that you will hold my son responsible for the work that he needs to get done, right? I know a high school principal that set up a legitimate behavior expectation system for the high school kids and the middle school kids in Zoom. And that requires how they're interacting with Zoom, like kids taking over screen sharing and writing on things, how they're properly participating, and then the work that they hand in, how they're dressed, the language they use in the chats and in all those things. So there's some, and if they get kicked out, they're going to get a fail, and they could legitimately fail the grade. And in some cases in high school, for sure have to repeat a class. So that's very possible in high school, less in middle school, right? Because now we don't have that metric really to test them along the way that we're going to really leave a kid back. It's very uncommon that a middle school kid gets left back unless there's a much more major issue. But if he does value his grades and he does value being part of that, then I would go with the teacher and say, hey, please hold my son as accountable and as reasonable as possible under these circumstances, because that keeps our kids grounded. That keeps my son participating, functioning, focused, active.
Okay. No, thank you. That was helpful.
Guys, thank you so much for having me. I really, really appreciate this. Rabbi Alt and Shoshana, really, thank you so much. I'm done, and I hope this was helpful for everybody.
It was fantastic. Thank you so much, Shaya. Have a wonderful night. And thank you, everyone, for joining.
Yes, have a wonderful Shabbos, and guys, stay healthy and safe.
Amen.
Be well. Bye-bye.